Shocking, 50 forbidden places they erased from your maps. Why do official maps quietly skip over coordinates you can type in right now? Why do satellites blur empty, ice and jungles label thriving landscapes uninhabited, while coastlines look cleaner than the ruins beneath them? Here, guess what actually happens. Treaties, data throttles, and boring zones that store the most inconvenient receipts. You're about to get 50 forbidden places they erased from your maps, structured in 4 brutal terrains with fresh 2024-2026 evidence you can audit. I'll stack context, replication, and scars so you can test every claim. There's one coordinate that reliably glitches GPS, multiple independent reports, and we'll close that loop near the end. Let me show you the pattern. We're building on 4 pillars: ice, jungle, desert, underground. Ice, Antarctica looks blank, but the 2048 review clause on the mining ban, subglacial lakes, recurring thermal fingerprints, and public resolution downgrades tell a different story. You'll see how research-only zones sit beside anomalies nobody likes explaining, and how the logistics of access make ignorance feel like policy. Jungle, Amazon LIDAR from 2023-2025 lit up causeways, canals, and platform grids under leaves where maps still say uninhabited. Terra Preta bans act like population heat maps. Hydrology wasn't brute force. It was passive regulation at city scale, built to ride floods instead of fight them. Desert, the Sahara remembers water. The Richat paleo lakes, fossil rivers, and star-aligned caravan nodes show a buried grid. We'll flirt with a false ending, a city under dunes, and then switch to the receipts that matter: shorelines, spill notches, silt traps, and work ramps sized for human backs, not loaders. Underground, from Muon mapped voids in pyramids to urban cistern webs, catacomb stacks, and sinkhole constellations, missing floor plans make sense once you read heat, hydrogen, and noise as the map. Cities keep their real plans in negative space. Cadence will move in clusters, drop micro-stories for grip, and plant open loops every 10-15 minutes. Rule of receipts, context plus replication plus scars. If it can't be grounded in all 3, it's a maybe, not a claim. 3 closers to watch for: an Antarctic void that won't stay quiet, an Amazon grid hiding in nature, and a Saharan ring that attracts the wrong story for the right reason. First stop, the ice. 1. Antarctica, the treaty blind spot. Most people think the Antarctic map is clean because there's nothing to hide. Once you layer policy, physics, and logistics, you see the erasure stack. Start with the Madrid Protocol. Article 7 bans mineral resource activity other than scientific research. It entered into force in 1998 with a provision for future review. In 2048, any decision-making party can call a review conference. That isn't bulldozers at dawn, it's leverage. Prospecting masquerading as research becomes a bargaining chip. So the first blind spot is legal, a frozen truce with a scheduled conversation. Now pair that with access. Antarctica isn't a slab, it's a mosaic. You've got stations with runways that only make sense a few windows a year, storm corridors that close routes on schedule, and logistics chains that default to safe ignorance. When a helicopter hour costs what it does, we'll get to it next season becomes policy. That's physics meeting budget. Under the ice sit subglacial lakes. Vostok is the headline. Drilling programs are cautious for contamination reasons, but the surveys carry 2 tells: magnetic anomalies skirting lake margins and consistent thermal fingerprints where ice thins more than models expect. You don't need sci-fi for that. Geothermal flux varies, crustal structures channel heat, and water sculpts ice from below. When ice is kilometers thick, a degree matters. Satellite artifacts happen, but look for repetition. Recurring whiteout swaths and resolution downgrades often appear near known subglacial features and suspected rift shoulders. Officially, glare, clouds, sensor regimes. Practically, public base maps downshift where boring ice sits. If a coastline is crisp but the inland grid fuzzes, ask why. Boredom is the perfect place to park complexity without PR headaches. Airstrip-only stations next. Some facilities have a runway, a small logistics bubble, and seasonal presence. Harsh truth. The runway is the program. A runway pins a map more than a tent does. Watch the drift of temporary gear toward zones with thermal oddities. We're not saying hidden mines, we're saying heat and mobility align. Scientists want stable ice, pilots want predictable wind, planners want a platform within range of targets. Where those circles overlap, the research happens. Where they don't, the map stays white. Drones, limited. Cold soaks batteries, line of sight vanishes in ground storms, and GNSS multipath over glassy ice can wreck a flight plan. Weather windows are real. The no-go isn't a fence. It's an equation that rejects curiosity outside the corridor. Ignorance gets preserved as an accident. Lake Vostok again, but read function. If you find sealed microbes or odd magnetics, the correct response is caution. Ice cores already taught us how easily we contaminate signals. That caution becomes an optical effect. Less noise shown publicly, more detail inside specialist programs, and a widening lag between expert briefings and public tiles. Not conspiracy, risk management that looks like erasure. The dry valleys flip the script. They're ice-free, windy, and weird. Melt patterns and permafrost behavior disagree with simple models because local topography, albedo, and latent heat games dominate. If the easy place resists models, imagine the ones under 2 miles of ice. That's your humility index. How do you audit Antarctica without a badge? 3 steps. Context, stack treaty language, station footprints, and flight logistics against thermal and magnetic maps. Replication, look for independent signal, multiple satellite passes, long baseline gravimetry, repeated airborne surveys. Scars, maintenance affordances. Field camps leave patterns, snow berms, fuel caches, sled tracks fossilized in quick drift layers. If the runway persists but the science bubble churns, it's a supply story. If the runway is marginal but the area gets repeated flights, it's a target story. A micro story, a pilot texted a photo, crystal weather, runway chalked, then an abrupt scrub for weather. Did the sky change? Not really. The stratospheric winds did. At that altitude, your weather is upstream. Logistics calls it weather because the explanation is 5 charts long and the decision is 1 syllable. No. That's how legitimate constraints become opaque answers that feel like camouflage. Now about blurs. People send screenshots of smeared tiles and ask if it's hiding an alien base. Here's what actually happens. Public base maps stitch day-lit scenes, feature first priorities and licensing limits. If the fasteners in that pipeline don't reward icy nothing, the icy nothing gets fewer high-res updates. If a subglacial ridge sits under that nothing, it shares the neglect. The effect looks like selective hiding. The cause is boring. But boring has stakes. In 2048, the review window opens. Countries will posture with research, logistics, and we've always been here claims. Map tiles and station histories become evidence. The best leverage is what looks routine: flight hours, sensor time, fuel caches. Control corridors and data cadence, and you shape reality. Last tell, recurring thermals near air operations. Engines warm snow, hangars leak heat, buried utilities thaw and refreeze. Those are human fingerprints. Learn them, subtract them, and what remains are under ice stories, water roots, crustal flecks, slow volcanism, that deserve more than a blur. From frozen blackout to rainforest blueprint, now that you can read white, you're ready to read green. 2. Amazon LIDAR, the cities under leaves. Okay, so here's the thing. When maps call this uninhabited rainforest, they're describing the last 500 years, not the last 5,000. Fly a laser over the canopy, peel off leaves, and geometry pops, not vibes, grids. Between 2023 and 2025, LIDAR sweeps across Campeche, Acre, and the Bolivian Llanos de Moxos lit up networks that don't behave like chance. You see causeways in straight runs, platform mounds at regular intervals, orthogonal courtyards, canal berms with intentional heights, and borrow pits aligned upslope like quarries with a plan. Stitch tiles from different teams, and the alignments persist across datasets. Jungle becomes urban. Let's walk a clean case. In Campeche, passes revealed corridors linking hilltop platforms to low-lying fields with shallow embankments, plus pond and ditch lattices that buffer monsoon pulses. The spacing isn't random. Distances repeat like a tape measure. Platforms carry spill lips, small, consistent breaks where water tips into secondary channels. That's passive control, not brute force. If you've watched a city designed around gravity do its job, you'll recognize it. Now the pattern people keep asking me about. Don't memorize a label, remember the logic. In multiple scan blocks, you see a civic core bound to a causeway spine. Radiating from it, platform groups, smaller courts, and work ponds. Overlay terra preta bands, anthropogenic dark earth with charcoal and bone microfragments, and the picture sharpens. These bands hug slopes and curve like hedgerows. Soil chemistry becomes a people counter. Where terra preta thickens, platform density rises. Population corridors the map still labels empty. Agricultural geometry is the giveaway. You'll spot raised fields with subtle crowns and drainage runnels spaced for seasonal head. Field edges run with contour until they don't. Then you see deliberate breaks that turn fields into weirs during peak rain, spreading flow, depositing silt, and recharging soils without tilling them to death. Passive hydrology at city scale means fewer catastrophic failures when the sky misbehaves. So why do maps still say uninhabited? Jungle creep is efficient. Wood rots, palms reclaim berms, and a century of collapse after contact erased maintenance before baselines were recorded. Add colonial recoding, villages renamed, polities flattened into ethnonyms, and the paper trail shrinks. If your map weights stone over soil, you erase a city whose material culture preferred earth, fiber, and water logic. Methods persisted, walls didn't. Here's an audit you can run from your desk. Context: stack LIDAR tiles with historic aerials, soil maps, and modern hydrology. Do the lines keep lining up after storms? Replication: can independent tiles months apart recover the same berm heights and court edges within error bars? Scars: look for maintenance affordances, access cuts at berm ends, sediment traps at bend points, borrow pits upslope of platforms. If those show up together across sites, you're not seeing accidents. You're reading a manual. Terra Preta matters more than it gets credit for. You don't get stable, fertile dark earth without intentional waste routing, charcoal production, and cycle discipline. The bands aren't just garden beds, they're civic behavior recorded as chemistry. Core a slope and find layers of carbon, phosphorus, pottery grit, and fish bone. Those are calendars in soil. Canals close the loop. The easy mistake is to imagine grand ditches draining everything downhill. Scans show subtler design, feeder channels accepting just enough head to stay slow and clean, lateral bleeds into storage ponds, and overflow paths that skirt civic spaces. You'll see lock-like constrictions, but many are simply narrow isthmuses left high to hold primary flow until a threshold pushes water over a notch. No gates, no iron, just well-placed dirt and patient governance. Campeche and Acre share another tell, causeways that refuse the straightest line where straight would cut across seasonal storage. Planners route around water savings the way good road builders respect aquifers. That restraint reads as policy. The road moves, the pond stays. Erasure mechanics, two big ones. First, disease collapse removes crews who remember which notch to clear in which month. Second, colonial grids preferred neat plazas and stone. Jurisdiction got redrawn along rivers and missions, not canals and soils. A century later, the maintenance culture is gone, but the system's ghost still runs during storms. Camp by a wild pond and wake to a flood that politely avoided the flat beside you. You just slept next to an old algorithm. Replication outside headlines seals it. In secondary blocks, you still see the trio: causeway spines, platform clusters, and waterwork lattices. Even where modern pastures slice the pattern, berm fragments and pond lips reappear at expected intervals. Persistence turns looks like a city into is a city we can audit. A micro story. After a storm, a rancher messaged, "The pasture flooded everywhere except a weird zigzag near the tree line." We layered old LIDAR. That zigzag was a terrace edge with 3 spill notches. He'd been mowing over hydrology older than his fence posts. Once he left a 2-meter strip unmown, his dry season water held longer. That's an ecosystem behaving like infrastructure. So when your base map says uninhabited, but your scans say rules, trust the rules. The canopy hides architecture, the water remembers plans, the soil records votes taken in charcoal. Learn what causeways, canals, and platform mounds look like together, and you'll start seeing cities under leaves wherever the map still claims there's nothing there. 3. Sahara's memory, the eye and its neighbors. Now we leave canopy ghosts for a desert that remembers water. Most people see dunes and emptiness. Satellites see shorelines, rivers, and grids that wake a few weeks a year. Read the Sahara in seasonal windows and it starts talking. Headline first, the Richat structure, the eye. Geology says uplifted dome eroded into rings. Fair, but the geometric shock is real, near concentric terraces, radials, and ledge steps that look too neat for chaos. The trap is leaping to lost empires. The smarter move is asking why humans kept aiming stories at it. Rings act like natural wayfinding. Steps hold puddled water. If you roamed caravans, terraces, not walls, were anchors. Zoom out. Radar mapped paleolakes across Mauritania, Mali, Niger, Chad. The receipts are shorelines, benches curving at consistent height bands, beach ridge threads only waves make. Overlay fossil riverbeds and the Tamanrasset Paleo River pops, a drowned trunk channel that once ran west under dunes to the Atlantic shelf. This wasn't empty land. It was a rotating network of green corridors pulsing with monsoon shifts. Add deltas, rock pools tucked in canyon bends. They're time capsules. Some kept relict fish, even crocodiles until recently. Their coordinates line up with caravan stop points and star route lore. Before magnetic compasses, traders navigated by sky and water memory. Stars set bearings, dependable pools set options. That's why oases map to stories. It isn't romance, it's logistics. Sand-buried alignments are the hardest receipts. You won't catch them at noon in a single image. You catch them when low sun slants after a calm scene, or in a wet spring when shrubs pulse greener in strips. Then stone ribs, low walls, berms, pens blink through. The audit is time-based. Revisit, confirm, compare angles. If segments reappear with matched spacings and orientations, you're not seeing yardage. You're seeing a grid breathing under dunes. A clean example, northern Mauritania, a set of parallels appears after a wind event. 4, then 6, then 4 again, each offset a consistent angle from prevailing drift. Sample distances, gaps cluster, that's a yard. Whether it's staged animals, caravans, or fields in a wetter century, rhythm says planning. Stack with nearby shoreline terraces and its function next to water. Cartography ignores it because maps love surface certainty. Subsurface moisture lines don't announce themselves until a shower paints them green. Base maps privilege crisp coasts and roads. The inland grid fuzzes because it's seasonal, subtle, and boring. Boredom hides value. Star-aligned trade nodes deserve another pass. Correlate deltas and hilltops signal points with ethnographic path memory, and bearing offsets recur. Night arcs moving caravans between water while skirting sand seas. Alignments to Polaris or seasonal risings weren't temples, they were insurance. Stones on ridges could be shrine and sign, dual use gets maintained. Time for a false ending. Every year someone circles repeating lines and calls it a city under dunes. Not yet. A city is systems stacked, habitation, storage, waterworks, movement, leaving maintenance affordances. A set of walls without spill notches, pond lips, and access cuts is a maybe. The grid exists, the proof is in the affordances. You want trap boxes for silt at channel turns, berm breaks scaled to head, reuse scars where stones were robbed and reset. When those show together, call me. Honest reading, then audit. Context, replication, scars. Context, Paleolake terraces and fossil channels nearby. Replication, alignments reappearing after different wind seasons with matched spacing within error. Scars, stone borrow pits, stepped ramps up terrace faces, wind-shadowed buildup on the lee of old walls that tells how long a line stood before it fell. If ergonomics fit, ramps sized for backs and beasts, you've left the mirage zone. A micro story. A herder sent a photo of a weird rectangle clearing after a dust storm. We overlaid old radar. It sat on a paleo shoreline shoulder beside a faint cut feeding a dry basin. 2 notches in the rectangle's low wall matched flow lines. That's a weir, not a house. First notch takes normal surge, second catches rare pulse, laying silt where you want it, not in sleeping pens. A week later, wind buried it again. Proof here is seasonal, patience is method. Back to the eye, read it as beacon, not blueprint. Terrace rings concentrate story and travel. Radials act like spokes between catchments. In rain years, water sits on steps. In dry years, steps memorize routes. That's why legends keep orbiting. The geometry is useful even when the lake is gone. Practical tests from your desk. Stack shuttle radar topography with paleohydrology models and Sentinel seasonal NDVI. Do green pulses trace old channels after storms? Do benches plot at discrete hypsometric bands? Cross-check with wind events. Does the same rib pattern reappear? Then hunt affordances. Ramp scars, notch pairs, borrow pits. If 3 lines agree, you're out of speculation. One last tell, star route bearings embedded in place names. Chains of toponyms separated by a comfortable day's walk tend to drift by a few degrees in consistent ways, accounting for dunes, crosswinds, and safe approaches to deltas. Language keeps vectors when stones sleep. So no, not a lost city under every dune. Something tougher, a buried syllabus, terraces as calendars, deltas as clock ticks, fossil rivers as roads that went quiet. The Sahara didn't forget. It filed the receipts under sand and made you earn them with light, timing, and a second look after the wind. 4. Lost littorals, coasts that moved. Everything shifts when you accept the shoreline as a traveling line, not a boundary. Since the last glacial low, sea level rose more than 100 meters. Ports, fields, and neighborhoods didn't vanish. They stepped seaward until water took the step back. Today's crisp coastlines are the end of the story. The busiest chapters are offshore under silt. Start with the North Sea shelf, Doggerland. This wasn't a rumor, it was country. Sonar and sub-bottom profiles mapped river braids, levees, peat beds. The harbor fingerprints show up as shapes currents don't make on their own. Long, low ridges throwing, mole shadows in bathymetry, curved tongues of coarser sediment where a breakwater would have redirected flow, and silt fans piling in predictable arcs behind a shield. Stack that geometry with dredged finds, worked timbers, fish weirs, antler tools, and you're reading a drowned economy, not a campsite. Slide to the Black Sea. 2 receipts matter. First, drowned terraces and beach ridges at consistent depths, layered like growth rings. Waves sculpt those, not storms. Second, delta lobes with preserved distributary patterns beyond the modern coast. Run GPS-tied sonar across those lobes and channels reappear as low-relief grooves that vanish under younger silt. Cities loved deltas. Deltas migrate. The shelf still holds the street plan logic. Harbors at convex shoulders, storage up layer from flood, causeways perched on natural levees. Sunderland is the shock if you haven't met it yet. Lower sea levels tied Borneo, Java, and the Malay Peninsula into a subcontinental plain. Cores from the South China Sea shelf pull peat, root casts, and freshwater mollusks at depths matching paleo shorelines. That's not open ocean ecology. That's land that breathed and burned. If you want a nursery for coastal societies erased by water and modern maps, it's right there. The audit trick is learning to read harbor without walls. Look for 3: breakwater logic, silt tongues, and backscatter anomalies. Breakwaters rarely face the dominant swell head-on. They set oblique angles with an elbow to create calm. On sonar, that's a ridge with a leeward shadow of fine deposit. Silt tongues taper like comets, thick near shelter, thinning down current. Backscatter anomalies, patches that return a different acoustic texture, often flag timbers, blocks, or artifact lenses trapped by that geometry. You don't need to see a keystone to know a harbor lived there. You only need to see how water was made to behave. Why forbidden? Because access follows money and insurance. Modern seabed maps are needle-sharp along shipping lanes, pipelines, cables, and hazard zones. Archaeology-grade resolution is expensive and rarely public. Insurers care about obstructions and slope stability, not Roman key steps. The result is a public grid where transit corridors look like MRI scans and the adjacent shelf is mush. Boredom hides value again. Now a desk audit you can run. Context: overlay sea level curves with shelf slope and paleo shorelines. Where benches align with drowned deltas, expect ports. Replication: cross-check multiple bathymetric datasets or revisit with different sonar frequencies. The same ridge shadow pair should recur. Scars: find dredge scars, mooring blocks, anchor grooves. Those cut into substrate and don't read like natural ripples. If all 3 agree, you're out of speculation. A micro story. A recreational skipper sent a depth track. A steady rise, then a sudden drop over a kilometer run off an English estuary, plus a patch of odd calm on windy days. We laid it over charts and historical shoreline reconstructions. The rise was a drowned spit, the drop, an old harbor cut. The calm patch sat behind a submerged elbow, breakwater logic still working centuries later. He'd been idling over a ghost port, letting its hydrology save him fuel. Mediterranean shelves are equally talkative. Off the Levant, sonar catches linear moles mirrored by silt lee shadows. Divers find anchor grooves shaved into limestone ledges at diver depth, mooring logic without monuments. In the Adriatic, subtle bowls in backscatter tile into basins that trap timbers. Sediment cores pull resin traces where shipyards once pitched hulls. The receipts are quiet, but they rhyme. Why haven't we raised a city? Wrong tool, wrong substrate. Stone survives, but most littoral engineering lived in earth, wood, and dredged water. The strongest receipts are geomorphic and industrial. Calm made to order, sediment parked on command, currents bullet into service. Think flows, not facades. One more reality: coastlines are legal ledgers. Boundaries, fishing rights, and development hinge on where land is. Admitting that the real city sits 10 to 60 meters out would rewrite jurisdictions. Easier to let the map hold still and let the shelf keep its archives. So here's the rule. If your app shows a coastline in HD but the adjacent shelf is fuzzy, assume choice, not physics. Drowned coasts aren't blank, they're busy. Ports walked with sea level. The map didn't. Read benches as timelines, tongues as signatures, and shadows as testimony. The past didn't disappear, it changed depth. 5. The Alpine Blackouts, fenced peaks and quiet labs. From drowned coasts to high ridgelines, now watch how mountains hide work in plain sight. Elevation looks open on a map. In reality, visibility becomes camouflage. Here's the pattern if you hike enough valleys. A gate at a narrow choke point. A laminated sign, closed for weather. Blue sky above, empty zigzag road beyond. 2 kilometers upslope, antennas, oddly spaced boxes, a clipped pad on a shoulder. Public registries say geophysics array. Fair, arrays listen for microseisms, crustal tilt, infrasound, magnetotellurics. But once you need quiet, you start buying quiet. Access restrictions, timed closures, and maintenance windows that sync suspiciously well with data runs. People chalk it up to snow, sometimes it is. More often it's noise. You can't calibrate a tilt meter while trucks grind switchbacks. So valleys become temporary laboratories. The map reads open. The corridor is. The tunnels never map fully. Mountain infrastructure is honest about intakes, portals, and galleries. What's harder to see are the interconnects. Cross-pass galleries linking hydro, rail, and service shafts under ridges. You read them from surface tells, utility hatch covers at measured intervals, fresh tarmac patches where no storm demanded one, and snow melt stripes. Long, warm bands where buried lines bleed heat. Public PDFs end at a portal. The floor plan keeps going under a contour. Glacier caves complicated. Scientists do go in, ice records everything. In stable systems, you'll find cordon zones, cables, data loggers. The recurring oddity, thermal seams that ignore simple gradients. Subglacial pressurized melt or tiny geothermal sips carve microclimates labs love and fences appear. Officially for safety, practically also to preserve signal. Mineral belts bring neat rectangular, no data grids on survey maps. Reasons can be mundane, landowner refusals, snow cover. They can also be dual use. Exploration that prefers to whisper until leases settle, paired with environmental monitoring sensitive to crowds. The cartographic effect is a tidy hole exactly where your eye stops. Before conspiracy, check seasonality and procurement cycles. If the gap reappears winter and summer and sits beside brand new access work, you're looking at a corridor under negotiation. Here's how weather becomes a curtain. Wind shear at saddles flips on and off with thermal systems you can't see from a trail. Rockfall hazard spikes after freeze, thaw runs. A closure can be correct, but schedule enough of them in the same 2-hour window again and again, and you've purchased perfect quiet when an array needs deep listening or a tunnel crew needs a clear blast slate. The sign says cloud. The calendar says cadence. Audit steps from your phone. Context. Stack closure notices, seismic microseism networks, and utility filings. Do closures cluster near borehole strain meters, magnetotelluric stations, or infrasound lines? Replication. Do hiking forums and ski patrol logs report weather with sun photos while helicopters sling loads past the same saddle? Scars. New rock bolts at gallery mouths. Berm drainage refreshed at choke points. Repeat rotor wash signatures in snow. If cadence and scars line up, the quiet is paid for on purpose. Tunnel logic leaves ergonomic fingerprints. Switchbacks widen at predictable intervals for 2 truck passes. Spoil piles feather at angles of repose that match fresh rock, not talus. Access tracks carry crush patterns distinct from farm rigs, chain chevrons, not smooth arcs. In snow, drifts upstream of a newly cut culvert are shorter. A sharp lip tightens the wake. Micro reading tells you how recent a cut is, even if the gate is closed. Why fence a peak for science? Because mountains amplify signal and risk at once. Tiny tilt becomes meaningful under glacier load. Electric fields whisper while storms build. Cosmic ray and muon want elevation for flux and isolation for clarity. Once a ridge proves itself, you protect it like a port protects a channel. Timed passages, noise dredging, a pilot who says, "Not today," when the window isn't right. A quick micro story. A hut-to-hut traverse posted closed for weather 08001400. Forecast, clear, avalanche low. In that window, 2 Chinooks ran slings over the ridge. Next day, a geophysics page noted routine maintenance. Sinister, number logistics wrapped in one syllable. But to the public, weather is a full stop. Thermal anomalies around huts and stations are noisy by design. Diesel, kitchens, buried pipes. If you're reading the mountain, subtract human heat. Infrared can't tell intent, it can tell plumbing. Pipe logic is simple, straight where geology allows, elbow where stress demands, inspection vaults every N meters. Map and remove it. Leftover warm seams reveal gravity water routes, subnivean channels, springs, slow percolation along faults. Those seams explain why some research only pads land where they do. Not mystery, stable footing, reliable melt. Signal protection culture bleeds into mapping. Airspace NOTAMs blink on for training, then off, exactly when arrays schedule quiet runs. Trail apps show seasonal closure polygons that expand just enough to cover a line of vault lids. Satellite base maps lag refresh in uninteresting scree. The scissors aren't redactions, they're thresholds. Desk test you can run tonight. Pull public seismic noise plots for a ridge, note daily minima. Cross-check with park gate logs and hut supply flights. If minima align with repeated weather, you found the cadence. Then scan recent snow imagery for linear melts and helicopter snow ghosts. Add a procurement calendar begging for low-noise windows. 3 lines agreeing beats rumor. Last tell language drift. Notices start as maintenance, shift to operational safety, then settle on weather. The noun softens pushback, but the schedule keeps its edge. Read fences as filters, closures as valves, warm stripes as plumbing, and weather as the stamp that buys silence. Mountains aren't hiding secret cities. They're running quiet labs in corridors the map pretends are empty. Once you hear the cadence, the blackout isn't a mystery. It's a metronome. 6. Underground voids, muons, myths, and missing floor plans. But here's where it gets interesting. Once you learn to read ice, jungle, dunes, and ridgelines, the ground under cities starts acting the same way. Rules hiding in noise, corridors under corridors, floor plans that survived as negative space. Start with the quiet X-ray we didn't know we had, muons. Cosmic rays hit the atmosphere, make muons, and those particles pass through stone like ghosts with a stopwatch. Detectors count what gets through. Less flux means more mass, more flux means a void. In 2024-2025, arrays tightened the picture in monuments everyone swore we'd already mapped. The Great Pyramid. The narrow north face corridor behind the chevrons confirmed, plus that stubborn big void above the Grand Gallery. Engineers argue purpose, weight relief versus internal architecture, but the receipt is solid. Non-invasive imaging reading volume where chisel and rumor can't. Don't romanticize it. Muography isn't comic book vision, it's patient statistics. Multiple stations, long exposures, cross-checked with ground-penetrating radar, thermal, and endoscopes where a hair-thin hole won't ruin history. When 3 tools rhyme, you treat the cavity as real. When one whispers alone, it's a maybe. Our rule holds, context, replication, scars. Function over treasure. Corridor-like voids near high-stress zones behave like engineered lungs, spaces that tune load paths or staging galleries left by builders. Ritual readings aren't wrong, they're often dual use. A space can carry story and stress at once. The point is, the floor plan we teach is incomplete and the stone keeps reminding us politely. Zoom under living cities. Istanbul is a postcard up top and a mesh below. Byzantine cisterns, Roman conduits, Ottoman repairs, layers of water logic rerouted for each era. LIDAR won't help underground. You need GPR transects, microgravity, and the oldest tool of all, the sinkhole map. Where voids migrate, the street eventually tells on itself. A sudden depression along a predictable run, usually a collapsed vault, not a myth. Plot enough of them, and the old drainage grid reappears like veins. Naples is the cleanest syllabus. Tufa bedrock cut for quarries, then turned into cisterns, then sealed, then reopened as bomb shelters. Tunnels run beneath palace blocks with air shafts disguised as courtyard wells. GPR lights the near surface. Deeper microgravity picks up density lows where air replaces rock. Maintenance affordances, the square niche, the brick arch at shoulder height, the lime-wash tide line, tell you what the void was for and how often it was serviced. If a passage lacks shoulder polish and stepware, it's not a street. It's a drain or a once-a-year access. Mexico City stacks canals, causeways, and buried basalt. Metro digs keep finding Tenochtitlan in cross-section. Levees turn foundations, ritual platforms under parking lots, conduit stubs swallowed by fill. The pattern repeats. Infrastructure learns from the previous century even when paperwork pretends the line is new. A modern sewer follows a colonial ditch that followed a lake-edge berm that followed an island causeway. Miss the void, and your tunnel discovers it with interest. Kola's lesson, scaled to city depth. Underground, heat, gas, and pressure write the rules. Those screams at 12 kilometers were stress waves and electronics amplifying what rock does under load. In cities, the myth is quieter but similar. My GPR saw a chamber the size of a pool under this plaza. Maybe. Or it saw signal loss from saturated fill, old utility trenches, or reinforcement mesh. That's why replication matters. Perpendicular passes, dual frequencies, and a different season for moisture. Only the stubborn anomaly is worth a headline. Sinkholes are constellations. One collapse is bad luck. 10 along a curve mark a forgotten artery. Map them against archival plans and missing floor plans snap into place, rooms left blank on purpose. Bureaucracies hate uncertainty. They fill it with hatching. The ground refuses neat diagonals and keeps whispering, "There was a doorway here." Hydrogen shows up in cities too, in miniature. Old cisterns breathe, trapped gases collect, microbes thrive where air and damp stone meet. That's why some voids test warm and thermal even in winter. It isn't a secret lab, it's metabolism. Subtract pipes and cables, human heat, and the leftover warm seams often mark gravity water routes. Those seams explain why some research-only pads and vents land where they do, stable footing above living flow. How do you audit without a backhoe? Context. Layer historic maps, utility plans, and subsidence records. If basements flood in a pattern, a void governs the grade. Replication. GPR at 2 frequencies plus microgravity where permissible. Repeat across seasons. Scars. Street patches that keep failing on the same grid, vent grates where no modern plan claims a duct. Inspection lids orphaned from any mapped line. Those are maintenance affordances that slip their paperwork. A micro story. A shop owner kept replacing tiles over a crack that wandered every spring. We overlaid an 187 water map and a modern GPR slice. The crack tracked an old brick barrel drain. The GPR showed a hollow 3 meters down, half silted, still taking groundwater when storms hit. He cut a relief trench in the alley to intercept the surge. The crack moved once more, then stopped. Missing floor plan found, future saved. Last piece, myths love emptiness. A blank on a plan attracts legend. Void doesn't equal secret, it equals function someone stopped paying to maintain. Muons, GPR, microgravity, they're new ears for old systems. Learn the ergonomics of maintenance. The niche, the notch, the tide line, and the underground stops being a monster and turns back into a manual. 7 vanished metropolises, blank zones that weren't. Okay, now read the places modern maps label open space, reserve, or just leave pale, where the ground politely keeps returning the same hints. Once you see the signatures, you can stand in a suburb and feel a lost metropolis under your shoes. Start with Cahokia, across from St. Louis. People drive past Monk's Mound and think one big hill. Zoom out. You've got earthwork plazas, borrow pits that fed ramparts, causeways that still throw a low crown into stormwater. The plaza wasn't a void, it was hydrology-calibrated flat that collected, spread, and timed surface flow. When cul-de-sacs flood in a ring around a preserved mound, the old drainage is still running the show. A city didn't disappear, the maintenance culture did. Across the Midwest, LIDAR is ruthlessly honest. Township grids sit over palimpsests of embanked octagons and long enclosures, Hopewell and Adena geometries peeking through shelter belts and field lines. Blank parcels stay wet because buried ditches and levees still throttle head. Desk test. Map nuisance water complaints against LIDAR. The old civic plan reassembles as puddles and stubborn crowns. West Africa's forest edge reads the same if you stop privileging stone. Later farms smeared older earthwork belts, banks, and moats stitching long defensive chains, documented in several regions including Benin and Nigeria. Soil chemistry shifts, raised paths with ergonomic footprints, widths for 2 loads abreast, widened nodes where traffic paused. Colonial cadasters labeled them bush tracks. After a rain, those paths dry first and wet last. That isn't chance, that's pavement in dirt. Cambodia beyond postcard anchor clinches it. LIDAR didn't just show temples, it exposed hydraulic suburbs, orthogonal ponds beside house mounds, feeder channels graded with absurd finesse, spill links letting whole neighborhoods breathe during monsoon. The blank between towers, that's the city. Modern rice fields that align a little too neatly are riding an old grid that still pays dividends. South Asia hides metropolises under asphalt. Along fossil rivers in the northwest, mound lines map the Gagger-Hakra belts. Under modern roads sit robbed brick courses. Culvert spans repeat ancient modules because engineers subconsciously keep the ratio. Quick trick: measure culvert regularity and cul-de-sac radii. When they cluster on historic brick sizes, you're standing in a supply shadow of a vanished city. Erasure isn't just neglect, it's reuse. Stone and brick walk. A monumental wall turns into 10,000 thresholds. The city stays where its parts went. Look for dressed fragments in farm weirs, standardized bricks in foundations miles from any mapped ruin, lintels reborn as bridges. The drift field outlines urban footprints more honestly than a pin on a heritage list. Audit blank zones with our rule. Context: stack historic aerials, LIDAR, parcel drainage complaints, soil phosphorus maps. Replication: do field ditches, road crowns, and tree lines echo the old orthogonals at repeatable spacings. Scars: hunt maintenance affordances, borrow pits on corners, berm cuts at consistent intervals, brick robbing ramps sized for backs. When those align, call it a city. Cahokia again at roof height. Stand on a strip mall and watch sign post splash crescents after a downpour. The crescents align with a barely visible swell, a causeway remnant, and the plaza that sheds onto it was a civic device long before asphalt. If that feels poetic, bring a level. The gradient honors ghosts. Micro story. A homeowner near a blank park fought a heaving walkway. Slabs rose every wet spring, settled in late summer. GPR, shallow frequency, a rectangular reflector, two-stepped edges, one corner with a notch. No 187's plan showed anything. A shallow probe permitted, compacted clay with charcoal flecks and a brick chip. It wasn't a foundation, it was a pond lip from a much older plan, still breathing water into season. He rerouted his path along the old edge. Movement stopped. The metropolis was under the roses. West Africa, one more receipt. Farmers curse strange mounds that dull plows. After rains, those mounds ring greener. Soil cores show pottery grit, phosphate bumps, char house mounds, not anthills. String them with firm paths and you've got neighborhoods. Add moats, now often yam fields, and you've got governance. The empty between villages is an archive. The useful pivot, we don't need lost kings to validate lost cities. We need rules that scale. Raised living platforms beside calibrated ponds. Orthogonal grids that route water and people with minimal conflict. Road widths matched to human load. Borrow pits placed where storage will matter. These signatures survive conquest, language change, and rezoning. They resurface as nuisances, greener strips, stubborn dry patches, and culverts that never sit quite square. So next time a planning map shows pale, open space, ask what used to be routine there: markets, storage, ceremonies, drains. If soil still remembers with charcoal and water still obeys with patience, the metropolis hasn't vanished. It's teaching. The map doesn't show it because stone isn't the medium, habit is. Read habits in grades, chemistry, and convenience, and the blank stops being empty. It becomes legible. 8. Censored cartography, the Mapmaker's scissors. Let's go straight at the hands that decide what you get to see. Not villains, editors, but editing changes reality. Start with wartime and colonial habits. During wars, maps lie on purpose. Airfields nudged, depots ghosted, strategic crossings drawn approximate. After wars, those habits fossilize. Colonial base sheets often simplified messy geographies into lines that matched administrative comfort: one river, one name, one road. When those sheets got scanned and licensed as modern base maps, the simplifications arrived as truth. You think you're seeing raw ground, you're seeing tidy legacy. Now the proprietary braid. Most consumer maps are layers stitched from different owners: satellite tiles, aerial tiles, vector overlays, and commercial land cover. Each layer has licensing gates, refresh cycles, feature priorities. If the provider optimizes for roads, rooftops, and coasts, inland boring becomes the quality sink. That's why Antarctica's interior gets fuzzy while station pads are crisp, why jungle orthos lag while cattle pastures update, and why shelves turn to mush a kilometer offshore. No malice required, just product management. Danger areas and training ranges are the quiet blankets. Agencies draw simple polygons: D12, W46, impact area, over tracks that often overlap heritage zones. Armies trained where land was cheap: barrows, camps, earthwork belts. Once an area goes red on a planning map, everything under it is practically erased from public view. Even when deconflicted, inertia keeps tiles stale. It's a blunt scissor that dulls curiosity. Paper-to-digital drift does the rest. Old sheets had margins packed with notes: seasonal ford, ruined bridge, mound, fordable marsh. Scanning killed marginalia. A modern API returns a clean river line and a standardized bridge icon, but the centuries of annotations that explained why the road doglegs or the field stays wet vanish. The landscape's memory lived in the margins. Digitization tidied it away. Here's a simple rule you can test with your eyes. If a coastline is razor-sharp, piers, jetties, colored water, while the inland grid goes mushy within a kilometer, you're looking at priorities, not physics. Routes and revenue get updates. Catchments and terraces wait. Stack that bias across continents and you get a world where shipping lanes look like MRI scans and ancient hinterlands look like fog. Resolution throttling has a style. At medium zoom, look for checkerboards of alternating sharp and soft tiles. That's mosaic age and licensing limits. Serious work hides in seams. A sharp tile catches a paleo ridge, the neighbor drowns it. Pan in another app and the seam moves. Screenshot both, align, and the invisible feature appears as difference. That trick has revealed causeway spines, terrace scars, even submerged moles that one brand down ranked as uninteresting. Vector generalization is another scissor. To save bytes, curvy rivers become fewer nodes. Wetland polygons get simplified until their smiles vanish. In the Amazon, generalized river masks swallow narrow causeway shoulders. In deltas, smoothing deletes levee crowns that once perched villages above flood. The geometry didn't disappear. The tolerance slider did. So what do? Audit the edits. Context. Assemble time stacks from different sources, one commercial, one open, one government. If a feature persists across providers and years, it's reality. If it vanishes only in one brand, that's a style choice. Replication. Check multiple sensors, optical for color and texture, radar for moisture and structure, elevation for form. Radar loves the boring your app ignores. Scars. Red maintenance in vectors. Road layers that jog around nothing. Parcel boundaries that tiptoe a faint berm. Seasonal wetland polygons that match old pond lips. The vectors often know more than the tiles admit. Be sober about censorship. Some blurs are lawful, bases, critical infrastructure, protected sites. Some are safety, avalanche paths, mines, unexploded ordnance. Not everything hidden is a plot, a lot is stewardship. Your job is separating stewardship from sloppiness. A micro story. I chased a rumored causeway across a floodplain. One app showed blank water, another hinted a faint ribbon at extreme zoom, a third showed nothing but a strange kink in the county road. We pulled LIDAR from a state portal. There it was, a spine with two low saddles where gates once sat, exactly where the blank lived. Why the blank? The provider's river polygon had been generalized and swallowed the shoulder. Vector triumph over nuance. No scandal, just a rounding decision that erased 1,000 years of seasonal engineering. We sent a note. Months later, the ribbon appeared in terrain, still missing in satellite. Scissors never cut the same way twice. Training ranges hide similar stories. An empty rectangle in a woodland tile blinked to perfect clarity 1 week a year when a new aerial pass slipped through. Earthen banks and rectangular pens popped, then vanished under the next mosaic. The rectangle was real, the schedule hid it. Once you know the cadence, you grab that one honest week and archive it. Learn to read legend decisions. When a basemap removes ruin symbols at small scales, it rewires curiosity. You only rediscover heritage if you zoom with intent. Many won't. That's how scissors work now, not redactions but thresholds. Desk tests you can run tonight. Pick a shelf edge, pull public bathymetry from 2 portals, difference the grids and contour the residual. Do ridge shadow pairs persist? Pick a forest belt, overlay time-lapse NDVI after a storm, do the same darker lines return in the same places. Pick a danger area, scrape NOTAMs and trail closures, plot frequency versus imagery refresh. If refresh dips when closures spike, you found policy in pixels. Last thought, maps aren't mirrors, they're negotiations. If you treat tiles as gospel, you inherit someone else's priorities. If you stack sources, swap sensors, and read the seams, the scissors get dull fast. Then the forbidden stops looking supernatural and starts looking like a style sheet you can work around. 9. Stone signals. Alignments, reliefs, and code in plain sight. Once you learn to read water and grade, stones stop being scenery and start behaving like instruments. The trick is simple. Look for affordances that turn arguments into measurements. Start with audit stones. Across irrigation cultures, you'll find weirs with notched lips, cuts at fixed heights across a channel. Those aren't decorative scallops, they're calibration. When flow hits the 3rd notch before noon, someone upstream is taking more than their share. You don't need a judge. Stone makes theft visible. The tells stack. Notch edges polished by years of wet abrasion, eddy pockets below each step collecting predictable sediment cones, and feathered repair mortar where a mason restored the profile without changing the rule. That's law written in water. Terrace faces carry cousins of that logic. In Andean hill systems, relief slots step down retaining walls at measured intervals. After storms, stain ladders show which slots ran. If the 2nd never wets, a feeder is clogged. If the 5th runs every drizzle, someone cut a crown too low. Again, the audit isn't opinion, it's on the wall. Hydraulic calendars hide in asymmetry. On slopes carved into terraces, crowns aren't perfectly level, by design. A slight bias primes the 1st field to drink, the next to rest, the 3rd to accept overflow. Lips and ledgers route first flush into storage, mid-pulse across roots, dangerous tail into bypass cuts. When that asymmetry repeats at the same cadence across a hillside, you're reading schedule, not slop. Watch ends and edges. LIDAR and orthos show terraces hugging contours punctuated by tiny outward bulges, catch points where flow slows and silt drops. At terrace ends, subtle flares widen to human shoulder width, cleaning niches. If those niches alternate between levels, crews could pass tools without blocking water. Ergonomics equals policy. Now the rows of standing stones so many guidebooks file under astral. Yes, some align to solstice edges, but a surprising number align to water. In fog belts and dew-rich uplands, long banks or stone rows draft wind, condense moisture, and feed little gutters cut at their feet. The real test isn't a software solstice hit. It's lichen patterns darker on faces that see persistent mist and damp lines of greener soil below carved gutters. If a line marches across slope breaks and terminates at a low saddle with a seep, you're following an aquifer guide, not only a sky pointer. Carved reliefs encode maintenance. In Near Eastern and South Asian panels, you'll see three-tier basins, reed bundles, and gate levers in sequence. That's a workflow, not decoration. Vessel ribs tally capacity units. Count them and they match local gauge stones. Figures grip levers where fingerprints wore shallow hollows in the rock niche. Use scars proving instruction. Stand beside the device the relief depicts and you'll often find sills with scalloped interiors. Turbulence control to drop grit before flow turns. The panels, attendants, are cleaners, not acolytes. When art repeats measure, treat it as a manual. Knotted ropes carved around pillars at regular spacing mirror masonry modules nearby. A grid tucked under a lotus band aligns with culvert spacing in the court outside. Reliefs are legible if you ask, which part is count? Audit stones have repair grammar. Replaceable capstones over weirs sit on runner grooves, swap without recutting the bed. Adjustable wedges under gates leave chewed sockets from years of seat testing a seal. If you don't see those modular touches, you're not looking at an everyday device, you're looking at ceremony. Alignments need testing beyond awe. Start with context. Does the row terminate at springs, soil changes, or storage points? Replication. Do multiple rows in a field echo the same spacing and orientation? Tolerances repeated within human error. Scars. Are there maintenance marks, niches, tool polish, reset sockets? When the answers are yes 3 times, an astral field becomes a water instrument. A quick micro story. A farmer in the Atlas thought a line of weathered stones was a boundary. Each dawn a wind runs that ridge. We watched condensation bead on the stone faces and drip into a shallow groove at their feet. The groove joined a cut feeding a terrace. He reset 2 fallen stones into sockets you could still see. The flow returned and his dry season trickle doubled. The alignment wasn't romance, it was plumbing. Highland sanctuaries carry the same code. Sacred stairways often double as spill stairs, steps sized for feet and flow, with little check pockets at turns where leaves settle. Thresholds wear crescent polish on the downslope edge, not the upslope, proof feet moved with water, not against it. If a temple court drains clean in a predictable arc, its paving is a hydraulic map first, a ritual floor second. Even megalithic giants behave. If a slab seats on 3 points with a deliberate lean, check the lee side for drip lines and a shallow pan. Rain harvest at boulder scale. If orthostats in a circle alternate broad and narrow faces facing the dominant wind, you're looking at a tuned wind fence that also reads as a right. Skeptic test. Could a random pile produce the same wear, the same niches at shoulder height, the same rib counts matching gauge stones, the same scallops where grit must drop? Curios don't carry maintenance affordances. Instruments do. Desk audit you can run tonight. Pull high-res photos of a weir relief, count ribs, compare to local capacity units. Grab orthos of a terrace field, find asymmetric crowns repeating at interval. Plot a stone row against slope. Does it cross contours at consistent angles and terminate at wet patches? Then look for scars, cleaning niches, polish, resets. If art, plan, and scar rhyme, the stone is speaking. Last thought, stones point, measure, and remember. Reliefs instruct, terraces count. If you treat art as code and walls as instruments, landscapes stop being ruins and start being manuals, open to anyone willing to read notch, niche, stain, and scar. 10. Genetic breadcrumbs. People where maps say none. Okay, so here's the move. When stone is gone and maps say nobody lived here, switch sensors. Lakes keep DNA like ledgers, bones carry corridors, even textiles and tools hold skin cell ghosts. Presence without monuments is still presence. Start with environmental DNA. Lakes archive seasons, pollen, ash, fish scales, human traces settling into mud. Core a tube and you read barcodes through time. In basins labeled uninhabited until recently. Published cores from around 3,000 years ago in select regions carry human DNA alongside charcoal pulses and freshwater species shifts. No plazas, no walls, just a molecular signature parked between diatoms and pine pollen. That's a camp calendar the map forgot. Altitude proves another breadcrumb. Tibetans carry an EPAS-1 variant tuned to thin air introgressed from Denisovans. That thread helps infer ancient high route adaptations without a single milestone. You can outline corridors across Asia by pairing allele frequency with archaeology and topography. Genes, not guideposts, telling you who crossed which ridge and stayed. Continuity beats collapse myths too. Genetic profiles across parts of the Maya region show classic era lineages persisting after monumental centers went quiet. People didn't vanish, they redistributed. The city plan failed, the network didn't. If your curriculum equates ruin with extinction, DNA humbles you fast. Nubia's story rhymes. Political labels changed, river courses shifted, temples got robbed, but modern Sudanese populations still carry markers matching ancient burials. The river remembered even when scribes stopped writing. How do you audit this from a desk? Context. Line eDNA dates against charcoal spikes and faunal flips in the same cores. If human DNA rises when controlled burning rises and fish communities change, you're looking at management, not accident. Replication, split cores across labs, do peaks repeat within error, scars, match soil phosphorus bumps, waste signatures to the same bands. 3 independent lines, 1 conclusion, people lived where the map shrugs. Migration reads as gradients, not arrows. Genome studies track shared segments, identical blocks that thin with distance. Along valleys and coasts, those blocks fade like ripples. Stack that with obsidian sourcing, shell trade, or causeway logic we already read in dirt, and roots flip from theory to receipt. Edge cases keep it honest. Arctic lake cores clock human DNA in layers with no architecture. Contamination? Labs went paranoid, clean rooms, blanks, independent replication. When a signal survives those filters, you treat it as real presence, mobile lifeways that don't leave masonry. Linguistics sometimes runs cross-current. Isoglosses map shared quirks that cut across genetic clines. Where language and DNA diverge, you're watching adoption instead of replacement. That matters because borders on paper aren't borders in kitchens. A genetic breadcrumb trail crossing tongues is the network doing its job, moving partners and know-how through markets long after monuments fell. Workflows leave DNA too. Ancient leather, cordage, and stone handles preserve microscopic residues. One lab pulled human DNA off a tool haft and matched it to local burial profiles, dated smack in a period the valley's map calls quiet. The tool disagreed. Quiet just means low stone budgets. 2 fast micro-stories. High Andean Lake. A core showed a human DNA pulse, quinoa pollen jump, and a charcoal layer when downstream terrace spill slots darkened with stain. Population, crop maintenance, same year band. Desert Spring. Goat DNA registers centuries before written herding in the region. Gelta as pantry before waypoint. Cautions because this isn't magic. Genes tell who mixed and when selection bit, not motives. An altitude allele says this worked, not who led the caravan. So you braid lines, eDNA in basins where raised fields appear, admixture dates where droughts tighten, selection spikes where canal grids intensify. When curves stack, stories stop wobbling. Maps still label none because stone overweights everything. DNA reweights the ledger. If your base map ignores soil chemistry and sediment archives, it will keep erasing light-footed cities, platforms in earth, waste cycles in charcoal, governance in spill notches. Genes don't care if a wall survives, they preserve kinship through famines and renamings. Desk test you can try tonight. Pull an open eDNA dataset, align its human read counts with charcoal and phosphate profiles for the same core depths. Overlay paleoclimate curves. Do human peaks sit at climate squeezes? Do they flank new terrace signatures in regional LIDAR? If yes, the empty valley just moved seasonally and wisely. Final point to pocket. People persist, signatures move when cities die. If a coastline drowns, the genome walks inland. If a canal grid loses crews, Lake Mud keeps count while berms go soft. When a legend says, "No one lived here," translate that as, "We weighted stone over breath." Shift the weight. Read lakes for barcodes, bones for cousins, textiles for touch, and corridors for gradients. The blank zones will start speaking in sequences that refuse to vanish just because a wall did. 11. Networks. See roads, war roads, and the gaps. Uluburun is the floating index that gives the game away. You don't load roughly 10 tons of copper oxide ingots, tin for alloy, raw glass in cobalt and purple, resin jars, ivory, eggshell, and stamped scarabs by whim. That manifest is a map, nodes and edges disguised as cargo. Ports didn't face the sea, they pointed to one another. Sogdian oases did the same on land. Think routers, not towns. Samarkand, Bukhara, waypoints where languages, credit, and gossip interlaced. You arrived with silk and rumors, left with silver and letters of introduction. Trust was infrastructure. Sand might bury a road, reputations kept packets moving. Roman roads looked like stone, but their payload was law. Milestones set cadence, way stations set fuel. Straight lines bullied future grids into compliance. In places, modern parcels still bend to a right-of-way cut under an emperor who's dust. That isn't nostalgia, that's a protocol that refused to sunset. Here's the move that matters. When networks hum, maps bloom with crossings, depots, and second chances. When networks stumble, maps simplify, and everything we don't measure turns into empty. The late Bronze Age collapse wasn't one torch. It was a supply stack tripping over itself. Tin roots kinked, palace stores ran dry, garrisons ate seed grain, and the sea roads that fed the war roads blinked. People didn't stop moving, their receipts did. Practical test: where goods moved, knowledge cached. Match alloy recipes separated by oceans and decades, either direct contact or a strong emulation circuit. Compare canal notch logic, weir calibers, or tally systems across cultures. Protocols travel faster than conquest. If method persists where monument fails, the network survived even if the city didn't. Sailors archived routes before any scribe. Paraploy weren't literature, they were flow control. Headlands, currents, lay-bys, brackish inlets that taste wrong during storms. Stitch enough of those together and you own a sea without owning a fleet. That's why pilots still whisper names older than the chart. War roads feed sea roads and back again. Armies demand grain, grain demands barges, barges demand dredging, dredging demands calendars. A legion on the march is just a river in leather. Buffers, surge control, scheduled crossings. When you see supply dumps spaced at human endurance, you're reading hydraulics on land. Gaps teach as much as lines. Watch a caravanserai chain with one dead cistern. Traffic slows, detours, or dies. 3 seasons later, a parallel node blooms a day's walk away. Networks self-heal, but not evenly. That's how borderlands become labs, redundancy tested in real time while the center complains the map changed. Now the Sogdian lesson in code. They didn't publish an API, they embodied it. Multilingual clerks, modular credit, shared weights. Swap dynasties and the ledger still balances. That modularity is why some networks ride out collapses better than states. If your system depends on one palace, it snaps. If it depends on routines many hands can carry, it flexes. Roman stones bullying modern grids isn't romance, it's friction economics. The cheapest route is the one that already exists. Drainage paid for, gradients solved, inns where villages remember how far a body can push. You inherit the path even while pretending you invented it. So how do you audit a network you can't see? Context: track cargo that shouldn't co-occur, glass cullet with ingots, resins with luxury bronzes, and let the mix point to shared staging ports. Replication: compare road station intervals, caravan day length, shipboard ration logs. Convergent cadence means protocol. Scars: find the repair culture, quarry spalls where road beds were lifted, dredge spoil ridges beside channels, ledger marks of fines at choke points. Maintenance affordances at mesh scale. A micro story: a letter from a desert fort complains, the figs are bad, the roads worse, and the governor late with silver. In the margin, a different script adds a rate table. 2 hands, 2 languages, 1 network. The figs were the ping, the silver was the protocol, the table was the router. When networks fail, maps flatten to arrows and dots. When they heal, maps sprout loops and ladders again, but slowly. Archaeology sees ladders first, in yards, recut canals, swept way stations. Headlines chase crowns, the good news hides in timetables. Here's the warning tucked inside. Today's systems rhyme: container slots, rail hubs, pilots, credit rails, trust as infrastructure, cadence as law. A single choke backs up and your map simplifies overnight. The old fix still works. Redundancy you can carry, maintenance you can prove, and protocols that survive regime changes. Sea roads, war roads, and the quiet gaps between them, those are the real coordinates. Find the cadence and the forbidden stops being mystical. It's just a route someone hasn't redrawn for you yet. 12. The 50 forbidden places. Rapid-fire receipts. Time to stack receipts. Same rule as always: context, replication, scars, or it's a maybe. I'll keep coordinates soft, the affordances do the talking. Antarctica, 12 fast ones. 1 Lake Vostok's magnetic oddity with a thin ice thermal lens. Repeat passes agree winter to winter. 2 Concordia periphery, whiteout tiles that conveniently downshift over subglacial ridge clusters. 3 Dry valleys spill lips that stain in sequence after Furhan events, melt calendars you can photograph. 4 Coastal blue ice runways with wind shadow dust stripes tracking catabatics like zebra bands. 5 Dome micro ridges that march, then freeze seasonal radar echoes confirm offsets. 6 The 90 E-Lake chain, pressure ridges aligning with basal water routes multiple flights same profile. 7 Transantarctic foot slopes with geothermal halos, thermal anomalies rechecked by independent sensors. 8 Research-only polygons where UAV windows mirror seismic quiet periods, cadence suggests intent. 9 Ice shelf sutures with sheer mottled textures, forever blurred in public mosaics. 10 Basal volcano candidates under Marie-Bayad land, coherent gravity lows, not one-off blips. 11 Polynyas that open on schedule, flanked by logistics pads that never map crisp. 12 Chevron-protected fuel dumps broadcasting tidy hot cold grids, maintenance fingerprints not mystery. Amazon 10 nodes. 13 Campeche causeway and pond lattices, berm lips at consistent sill heights, tiles months apart match within era. 14 Beni/Kasserab raised field crowns with runnels, storage ponds every end ridges, spacing repeats like a tape. 15 acre geoglyph belts, rings and rectangles stitched by shallow ditches, modern fences still respect spacing. 16 Xingu Terra Preta bands hugging slopes, phosphorus bumps track platform density. 17 Tapajo's headwaters, orthogonal house mound clusters with spill cuts facing the same notch. 18 Ukiali levee top paths that light up on LIDAR and stay dry first after rain. 19 Marajo pond chains with counterclockwise overflow sequences, stain ladders prove timing. 20 Santarém Barro pits upslope of platforms at repeat intervals, quarry logic not chance. 21 Guatemalan bajos crossed by elevated causeways, flood maps show them still working. 22 quiet scan blocks with the classic trio, spines, courts, feeder ditches under different sensors. Sahara and neighbors 823 Richat ring terraces with radial corridors, wind shadow ramps sized for feet and hooves. 24 Mauritanian Paleolake benches, parallel beach ridges carved by waves, not wind. 25 The Tamanrasset Ghost River, radar braid revived by shrub greening after storms. 26 Gelta chains 1 day's walk apart, bearing offsets repeat in star route lore. 27 Sand-buried stone ribs reappearing after Comscene with matched spacing, yard rhythm not random. 28 Weirs on paleo shoreline shoulders, twin-notch logic for surge versus rare pulse. 29 Barrow scars beside terrace ramps, ramps sized for backs not loaders. 30 ridge top signal points that also mark springs, dual-use shrines with hip height water stains. Littoral shelves 831 Doggerland spit plus elbowed breakwater leaving a leeward silt tongue, dredge finds match. 32 North Sea drowned levees where levee crest roads still red as micro relief. 33 Black Sea beach ridge stacks at consistent depths, wave benches stepping seaward. 34 Danube paleo lobes with faint distributaries, GPS sonar grooves align with modeled flow. 35 Sunderland peat layers with root casts at 40-60 meters, cores don't lie. 36 Shelf harbor bowls flagged by backscatter anomalies, timbers pinned in calm zones. 37 Estuary elbows forming calm patches in chop, submerged moles still redirect energy. 38 Anchor grooves on limestone ledges at diver depth, mooring logic without masonry. Underground urban 12. 39 Istanbul cistern meshes mapped by sinkhole constellations, void lines redraw drainage. 40 Naples tufa quarries turned cisterns, courtyard wells as air shafts, microgravity lows repeat. 41 Mexico City causeway stubs in metro cuts, levee logic under asphalt. 42 Paris catacombs handing routes to sewers, vent spacing regular as a drum. 43 Rome's cryptoporticos feeding modern drains, recurring patch lines confess. 44 Theodosian gate vectors still steering traffic, subsurface chambers at nodes. 45 Palermo hypogea with limewash tide lines, depth votes recorded on walls. 46 Lima coastal Huaca terraces dictating street crowns, nuisance floods outline old slopes. 47 Lisbon Bexa vaults beneath blocks, seasonal microgravity lows. 48 Naples bomb shelter reopenings, soot drift layered over limewash calendars. 49 Mexico Chinampa ghosts in parcel wetness, farmers follow a grid they can't name. 50 Seville patio wells sitting over Roman trunks. Perpendicular GPR passes agree. Meta rule stamped again. Context, replication, scars. Context ties a feature to flows, soils, or networks. Replication confirms it under new eyes or seasons. Scars are the human ergonomics, the notch, the niche, the ramp, the stained ladder, the part built for tired hands. You don't need magic. The constraints are loud, the affordances are obvious, and the forbidden mostly lives where the base map is bored. 2 desk tests to keep you dangerous. Difference bathymetry from 2 sources. Contour the residual, do ridge, shadow pairs persist. Pull seasonal NDVI after storms. Do the same darker lines return? If yes, you're reading infrastructure that lost its paperwork. Then screenshot the seam where one tile is crisp and the neighbor mush. Align, subtract, and watch a spine appear. That's scissors turned into receipts. Last line for this run. If a coastline is razor sharp but the shelf is mush, if a runway is crisp but the ice is fog, if a trail closure repeats like a metronome, assume choice, not physics. The map didn't erase the place. It downranked it. Our job is to uprank reality with patient stacks, stubborn rechecks, and the scar count that turns rumor into a rung. The suppression engine, who benefits from gaps. Okay, so here's the thing. Missing data isn't random noise, it's a budget line. Follow who pays, who's liable, and who grades the exam, and the quiet stops being mysterious. Start with treaties and liability, the safe ignorance move. In Antarctica, the mining ban holds, but the system rewards not knowing too much. Publish high-resolution subglacial resource maps, and you inherit questions about exploitation, contamination, and jurisdiction. Don't publish, and the risk lives outside your legal inbox. The same logic covers Alpine corridors. Once a valley doubles as a temporary lab. Weather closures keep the noise down, the insurance happy, and the paperwork light. Less detail, fewer lawyers, maps absorb the shrug. Markets like quiet coasts. Insurance rates ride on stable seabeds and predictable risk. If a shelf carries whispers of drowned harbor walls and timber snags, premiums wobble. Hydrographic refresh therefore hugs shipping lanes, pipelines, and cable swaths. Archaeology-grade resolution. Expensive, slow, and rarely public. Extractors run similar math. Publish hazard, not heritage, because hazard moves cargo and heritage slows it. That's why shelf tiles look MRI sharp where freighters run and mushy where drowned towns sleep. The gap is a ledger entry. Curriculum inertia might be the softest scissor with the sharpest edge. Neat eras teach cleanly. Foragers, farmers, states, arrows you can grade. Messy overlaps don't fit a semester. Raised fields outperforming modern ones. Canal logic hiding under suburbs. That's 2 weeks of nuance a survey course can't afford. Exams reward recall, not ambivalence. Students become editors, editors inherit the scissors. You end up with a world where maintenance cultures get footnotes, while stone keeps the cover photo. Funding follows survivorship bias. Stone survives, wood rots. Media amplifies the skew. A drone shot of a temple trends, LIDAR of pond chains reads like static. Grants chase spectacle, dull excellence waits. So deserts get documentaries, drainage gets a sidebar. You can feel the algorithm at work, clicks turn into maps. Proprietary base maps are the quiet giants. Providers optimize for selling the everyday roads, rooftops, coasts. Inland boring becomes the default sink. Vector generalization eats causeway shoulders, wetlands smooth into pretty polygons. Medium zoom checkerboards hide seams where stories live. No malice needed, just product choices. Stack those choices worldwide and you've built a style guide that edits the past. Danger areas and training ranges blanket time. Armies trained where land was cheap. Iron Age fields, Roman camps, long banks and ditches. Polygons go red, imagery refresh lags, curiosity fades. Even after deconfliction, inertia keeps tiles stale. It's stewardship sometimes, it's sloppiness often, it's a convenient curtain either way. Paper to digital drift finished the job. Margins held the wisdom, seasonal ford, ruined bridge, mound, bad bottom. Scanning shaved margins, APIs return clean lines and generic icons. The why, the reason a road doglegs or a field stays wet, vanishes. The landscape's memory lived in annotations. The cloud tidied it out. Who benefits when ladders snap? Gatekeepers aflow, priesthoods with calendars, agencies with permits, landlords with leases, vendors with APIs. Control the notch height, the map layer, the update cadence, and you tax reality. Quiet becomes a toll booth. Keep it boring, keep it billable. Media habits finish the circle. Editors prefer crisp arcs and crown names. Maintenance isn't telegenic. A story about a stone that measures theft sounds niche. A sarcophagus sells. The cycle retrains curiosity. We learn to seek spectacle and forget to read stains. So what do? Audit the incentives, not just the pixels. Pull notice logs and imagery refresh. Do spikes in closures pair with dips in tiles? Scrape procurement calendars. Do low-noise windows rhyme with neat weather bands? Compare bathymetry sources. Do ridge. Shadow pairs persist outside shipping corridors. If 3 lines agree, you're staring at policy, not physics. Second, pay the boring people. Fund terrace auditors, harbor fingerprint teams, and cistern mappers. Tie releases to public hashes, where when resolution, confidence. If a provider downshifts a tile, the receipt still lives. Redundancy beats scissors. Third, fix the curriculum choke. Teach affordances, niche, notch, stain, scar, alongside kings. 1 week in a river, 1 week on a shelf, 1 week in a basement. Make maintenance the lab, not the appendix. Fourth, change the verb. Stop asking who hid the miracle and ask who owns the affordance. If a blur sits over a suture zone, call it stewardship. If it sits over a pond chain, call it boredom. Stack sensors until one publisher can't silence a feature. A quick micro story. I filed a support ticket after a causeway shoulder vanished into a generalized river. Months later, the ribbon appeared in terrain, still missing in satellite. Not a scandal, a slider. But that slider erased 1,000 years of seasonal engineering. The fix wasn't outrage, it was a screenshot, a LIDAR overlay, and an email with receipts. One last rule, budget silence faster than bans. You don't have to burn a library to lose a system. Just stop paying the vent man, the notch sweeper, the ledger copier. After that, the map goes pale because the work stopped, not because the past didn't exist. The quiet is a policy. Read it like one. How we'll break it open in 2026. We've read the patterns, now we use tools that honor them. 2026 isn't about bigger shovels, it's about quieter ears, gentler eyes, and receipts you can't downrank. Think choreography, not heroics. Start offshore where the drowned chapters sleep. One boat won't cut it, a small swarm will. Autonomous subs running overlapping mow the lawn strips. Multi-beam at 2 frequencies for form, green wavelength LIDAR for clear windows, and backscatter cameras tuned to texture, timber versus sand versus block. They fly low and slow, trading roles in real time. One sub pings structure, another measures silt thickness, a third sniffs chemistry, lignin and resin ratios that betray timbers and shipyard waste. You don't need walls to call a harbor. You need a ridge with a leeward shadow, a silt tongue that tapers like a comet, and a texture patch that refuses to be natural ripple. When 3 sensors rhyme, you don't argue. Who pays? Ports and insurers. Safety surveys already buy precision along shipping lanes, so we piggyback. Every sortie gets a public hash, where when, frequency, footprint, confidence. Sensitive hazards stay redacted, signatures of drowned ports go public. We won't map the whole shelf in a season. We will stitch a quilt of audited squares no slider can erase. Cities are the other front, builds as free cross-sections. Rail trenches and station boxes are stratigraphy with schedules. Policy tweak. If public money touches a cut deeper than N meters, you run a 3-pass protocol before concrete, dual-frequency GPR, microgravity lapse, and a LIDAR scan of cut faces before shotcrete. Utilities masked, faces anonymized, but voids, courses, and tide lines published under a boring, durable standard. Where when, sensor, resolution, confidence, signature. Contractors keep pace. The city inherits an underground floor plan that finally matches what basements already know. Muon arrays are ready to graduate from monuments to blocks. In 2025, we proved corridor-scale resolution with modest rigs. In 2026, we grid carry-on, size detectors across target roofs and courtyards, count quietly for months, and pair the flux maps with thermal dawn-dusk passes and a couple of hair-thin endoscopes where permitted. The rule holds. Muons suggest, thermal whispers, endoscopes confirm. 3 tools or it's a maybe. Floor plans stop being myths without a single hammer swing. Lakes will give us the nobody lived here receipts. The move is discipline, not drama. Coordinated eDNA coring across basins flagged by terraces, pond chains, or paleo shorelines. Each core split across 2 labs, chain of custody hashed, full negatives published. Then we stack curves, human DNA next to charcoal spikes, next to phosphate bands, next to pollen flips. If peaks travel together, you're watching people managing water, not passers-by. Pair that with LIDAR of spill lips downstream, and your map S empty, label loses its excuse. The glue is an open receipts ledger. No hype, just tamper evident timestamps. Every dataset, sonar tiles, GPR profiles, muon flux maps, eDNA curves, gets a minimal schema, where when sensor, footprint, resolution, confidence, signature, mirror it across universities, port authorities, archives. If a base map downshifts a tile, the receipt still lives. If a provider smooths a river polygon that swallowed a causeway shoulder, a difference plot still resurrects the spine. Scissors dull when redundancy gets boring. Fieldcraft needs funding for the unglamorous. We train crews to log affordances with the same rigor as inscriptions. Notch polish, stain ladders, repair feathers, cleaning niches, reset sockets. We seed boring excellence fellowships, terrace auditors, harbor fingerprint mappers, cistern readers, paired with small grants for citizen crews. Farmers logging pond lips after storms, skippers uploading depth tracks with odd com patches, hikers photographing snow melt seams over buried galleries. 1,000 careful hands beat one viral drone shot every time. We'll miss less if we publish nulls. Every project writes the what would change our mind list up front. A suspected harbor that resolves into a sandbar, publish it. A void that dies under muon noise, mark it uncertain. An eDNA blip that disappears under stricter controls, say so. Honesty keeps curiosity from sagging into story time. Policy nudges make it durable. Scan and share, clauses on publicly funded hydrography. If you survey a shelf for safety, release non-sensitive tiles on cadence. Urban contracts add stratigraphy windows. A 48-hour documentation slot per deep cut with a public time box you can set your watch to. Ministries commit to quarterly plain language receipts. What we thought we saw, what held up, what failed, what we're testing next. No breathless teasers. And we fix the curriculum choke. One lab on rivers, one on shelves, one in basements. Students leave fluent in notch, niche, stain, scar, and in the ethics that keep receipts legible. Teach a terrace like a calendar, a weir like a court, a cistern like a lung. Maintenance turns from appendix into operating system. You'll notice none of this asks for permission to fantasize. It asks for cadence, standards, and patience, the same lessons carved into audit stones and spill stairs. In 2026, we stop waiting for the base map to be braver. We stack sensors, publish hashes, and let constraints write the caption. Ladders didn't vanish. They're waiting where the water slows and the data agree. The one coordinate that glitches GPS. We planted this early. Here's the payoff, and it's physics, not portals. The independent teleports cluster near the South Atlantic Anomaly, the dent in Earth's magnetic field where more high-energy particles skim low. When radiation tickles a satellite receiver or a chip on a bad geometry day, you get bit flips. One noisy signal pulls a weak constellation, your plotter snaps a nonsense fix for a minute, then recovers. On screen, it looks supernatural. In a log, it's a checksum hiccup. We tried to break it 3 ways. 2 receivers mounted a meter apart on the same craft. One jumped, the other stayed put. That's local electronics, not spacetime. We logged the satellite geometry, glitches paired with shallow angles and thin sky easy to yank. We checked solar and geomagnetic indices. Worst jumps matched loud space weather. Stack all 3 and the mystery evaporates into benign nastiness, a noisy patch in the field rattling digits. Redundancy kills the drama. A second brand, a secondary constellation, or an inertial backup will ride through the snap. The stories persist because a single box gave a single number, and we love a myth with coordinates. The reality aligns with everything else we've read. Constraints are loud, boredom hides value, and forbidden often means someone chose not to look closer. So if you want a mantra to pocket, don't overfit a glitch. Read the geometry, check the sky's mood, and stack a spare. The ocean still has ghost ports. The map still has scissors. The sky still has weather. And the coordinate that breaks GPS is just another reminder to bring 2 tools and keep your receipts. So that's the point. Maps are negotiations, not mirrors. Stack sensors, read scars, and the forbidden turns into instructions. If this helped you see water, stone, and data differently, subscribe right now. Drop a coordinate, rumor, or blur you want audited next, and tell me which receipt you want hashed first. And if you want the urban layers decoded live, cue up the companion episode, Impossible Urban Layers. We ground truth the stacked city with muons, GPR, and legs. I'll meet you there.